go ahead and call us to order, and Director Elithar, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have a roll call vote, ma'am?
Director Ellicott?
Here.
Director Evans?
Here.
Director Hernandez?
Here. Here.
Here. And I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda. I have a motion to approve. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. Any members of the public who wish to speak? Looks like we might have one. Oral? Okay. Oh, perfect timing, Mr. Hunsaker.
Clock.
You squeaked in there.
Yeah, I've got to adjust the clock, but I got to place it. It's late. Mike Hunsaker, 115 Equestrian Court, San Marcos. I want to reiterate my comments of the last meeting. I think it is unfair to charge seniors in particular, but ratepayers in general, when their meters are going to be charged for 3/4 inch capacity when they have 5/8 meters, or are expected to change to 3/4 in the future. The justification in the report said, well, the California Water Resources Board suggested that they be brought the same. Well, it's only appropriate for those people who need the capacity. Charging for capacity they do not have and will probably never use when they do get it is patently unfair. Also, the 5% increases are not justified. There's a note in the report, well, electric power went up over 5%. Well, electric power is only a portion of the costs. There has been a steady rise in reserves, and the charges you have are totally unfair and unjustified. Now, Mr. Scaglione did advance the thought that the additional charges for the capacity would be to pay for the meters. But the meters save water. They help reduce leaks, and they also reduce apparent losses, apparent leaks, namely water that's unbilled and can't be accounted for, but it is not from physical leaks. The other thing is that the meters are already being part of a budget. They also save money in the meter reading aspect. Now, to have this raise in rates, there needs to be a justification, a thorough justification, which is missing. And if this meter changes the justification, then the added advantages and the disadvantages should be weighed, measured, and put down. But at this point, it doesn't appear that there is anywhere near this type of rate increases, and it is especially inappropriate for people such as in mobile home parks who will never, ever use this water capacity, should pay for someone else's capacity. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent calendar.
Hey, quick question.
Sure.
For staff. Tom?
Yes.
Are the majority of our mobile home parks on a central single meter?
There are some with a big meter.
Majority?
Yes, I would say.
The majority on a central meter, so that doesn't really, we're not changing all those individual meters. We just have one meter we're charging.
It's what Mr. Hunsaker was referring to is the melding the 5/8 inch and 3/4 inch
I
meters. so
understand
it's-
what he's
yeah,
referring to. What I'm
district wide.
referring to is mobile home parks
Yeah,
don't have that situation.
correct. Yeah,
They're not individually metered.
most of them are not, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify too, I thought we went through a pretty comprehensive rate study when we came up with the proposed 5% increase, and there was much more in there than just the increase in power, such as, for example, a large part of that was the cost of imported water, right?
Correct.
Among other things. There's a whole list of things, right?
Yeah, that's for the commodity rate, but for the meter charge, it's almost everything except the cost of water goes into the meter charge. All of our fixed charges are recovered through the fixed meter charge. Right, so there's a lot.
Yeah, but the
more
overall, the
power.
5% that he
Correct, the overall
referenced,
includes
that's
that.
the
That's correct.
overall cost increase to the average bill.
That's correct.
So there's a lot that's captured into that, and it's
Yes.
not just power.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar, all matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or a member of the public requests that a particular item be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it will be considered separately under action items. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move to approve?
Got a motion? Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, let's get on with 2.1.
Okay, Ed, if you can
Thanks, Diane.
introduce this one?
This, President Snell, directors of the members of the board. Starting on page 29 of your board packet, all the way through 72, is the public health goals report. This is a special report that we're required by the state to perform every 3 years. It is different than the consumer confidence report that you recently saw, which is every year. And the consumer confidence report is more about everything that we find in the water, including minerals like calcium, magnesium. The public health goals report is just looking at any constituents we found that exceed that health goal, which is different than a maximum contaminant level, which is set by US EPA and by California State Water Resources Control Board. It used to be the public health department that ran the drinking water division, but now it's under another one. This actually comes from California EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, which under that is the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, which sets the public health goals. These are typically set at an extremely low level. A lot of them are set at 0, which is almost impossible to attain because scientifically you can't really measure 0. So a lot of these we'll never probably get down to. You can see in the report the different constituents that were found in the last 3 years. And then there's also, part of the report is how much it would cost per 1,000 gallons to treat the water to get it down to the public health goal level. Just to give you an idea, remember the public just recently mentioned that the rise in cost of water. If you tried to get all of those constituents out, you would more than triple the cost of water right now. And that's at the lowest estimated level. Otherwise, it's closer to 9 times the amount that we're paying for water right now. So we put this report together every 3 years. It is presented to the board. It goes in a board packet. We have to have a public hearing per the regulation. We have to give the public 15 days to review the report, which is why it's not going to be in the next board meeting. It'll be in the first board meeting in September. And that is the recommendation of staff, is to set the public hearing for September 7th. And I would be more than happy to answer questions about the report.
Any questions?
Move to set the public hearing.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions or comment? Okay. And you said September 7th, right?
September 7th.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Item 2.2.
Evening, President Snell and fellow board members. I'm here to discuss the professional services agreement for the operations building locker room expansion project. The O&M men's locker room, which is located in our building B next door, is currently undersized for our current staff. So this proposed expansion will double the size of the locker room, which will accommodate our current staff now and allow for future growth for district staff. The district sent a request for proposal to several architectural firms in April. We received 3 proposals. Those proposals were reviewed by staff. A panel of 4 staff members, myself and Ed included, reviewed those proposals. The firms were ranked on a number of categories, and staff did select Jeff Katz Architecture as the most qualified firm, and did negotiate a scope and fee for $66,800. The fiscal impact is included in your packet. Based on a estimated construction value of under $400,000, staff would recommend that you approve the professional services agreement with Jeff Katz Architecture for the amount of $66,800. Answer questions you have.
Director Hernandez.
And I do understand professional services are first looked at relative to the qualifications of the applicant, the firm. When I come up with a 16.911939241% of the contract, and no wonder I'm out of business. I mean, I'm not charging enough. Does this also include construction management during the course of the project?
The architect will provide some construction management, yes.
And in other proposals that we've seen what the pricing was, even though they were not selected, of the other 2 firms. Was their pricing in the range of this, or?
So each of the firms presented a price.
Yep.
Jeff Katz Architecture was actually in the middle of that grouping. However, those prices that they submit are not always apples to apples.
Right.
You have to break those down. How much of that is design? How much of that is construction management? And then some additional items, or say these are add-on prices. Some were wanted, some weren't. So you kind of dissect those, and that's what we did through the review process. And that price range was, like I said, still right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And their rates were actually the lowest rates. So if you actually break down their individual team
Hourly
rates,
rate.
they were actually the lowest. So, and
All right.
price is one of 6 categories that we reviewed.
Director Martin.
And we're looking forward to no change orders.
I wrote a very extensive scope, very detailed scope with this architect, and I have not known an architect that ever asked for an amendment.
We call them supplemental services.
Yeah, that's right. But as you know, there's always change conditions. For instance, one of the unique aspects of this job is we're gonna have to do some potholing, because there's a major electrical line that comes through this footprint of our expansion. So we've included as much as we can foresee happens. I think we've covered everything. Hopefully we have. So that's definitely our goal.
Well, let me ask, and I know you weren't here, but I think Ed probably was here when this building was being built. And from everything I've seen of this building, it is built, when it was built 20 years ago, it was built towards the future, with an eye on the future. And we have a lot of space in this building. Have we added duties onto this particular department? Or did we just miss that when we were building, which can happen? What happened to make this happen? Because like I said, the building was built very futuristic and with space in mind. What happened to this portion?
I can probably address that. The B building actually was undersized for the amount of staff for the future. I'm not sure it was a part of the design team on that at the time. But yeah, you will notice in the A building, there's certainly room for growth to build offices. In the B building, in the water operations department that I was in, as soon as we moved in, we had to start figuring out how we were going to add desks for future growth in there.
Okay.
And we've moved stuff around, but yeah, the B building was actually undersized for the amount of staff.
If you go to that locker room, I don't go to that locker room very often, but it's like maybe 5 or 6 guys can get out there in that room and change, because they have to change.
Oh,
and
I'm
dirty and
I'm
sweaty.
sure it's very necessary.
I'm not
That's
sure.
not-
There's about 40 right now being
Yeah.
used.
Wow, wow.
It's very tight.
There's
Congratulations on getting this moving.
I'm very happy about that, thank you.
Thank you.
And just so you know, we're also trying to do our best to make sure that this expansion looks like it's not just an addition, as you've seen some home additions. We're trying to take a little time, it may cost a little bit more in the construction dollars and the method that they're gonna have to use, but we wanna try to get it as seamless as possible.
Director Evans?
Thank you. Actually, you've probably answered my questions, but I just wanted it more clearly. So we're saying it was built 20 years ago, and what size was it then, and what size will it be now, size-wise?
We're basically gonna double the amount of space.
I know we're doubling it, I just didn't know what the amount
Say
was.
20 by,
I think we're gonna expand about 18 by 44. If you're interested, I can show you really just a sort of sketch.
Sketch?
Yeah, it's a sort of
And then that
sketch.
will double the opportunities, I know there's.
it'll more than double the actual locker space.
Okay.
And there's enough
Make it-
lockers right now for the existing staff, but they're the small type and we've
Oh,
got a lot
okay.
of gear and boots and stuff, so we're gonna expand the size of the
Right.
lockers for them. And they have no room to change is the biggest problem. They can go in there and grab their uniforms and then turn around and there's 10 other guys trying to
I
grab theirs.
understand.
So
That's too bad.
it's pretty much that whole space that we're expanding to be for lockers, benches for them to actually sit down, take their boots on and off.
And I also wanted to ask, how long have we been deferring this? Because it seems like this has been there for a while.
The project, I think, was initiated in 2010, I believe. It's before my time.
Kind of got kicked back several times.
We couldn't get the guys to squeeze any tighter after all those years of practice.
Well, unfortunately, they're mostly my size.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, there's pretty stout.
Okay.
Stout individuals.
Well, we're big, strong Americans. Well, I would like to move for approval, and I'd also like to, just before, if it gets a second or not, but I'd also like to comment, I appreciate your desire to not have change orders, but, and I know they happen, but I do want to compliment you on most of the projects before now. We've actually done a really good job with staying at budget, and I appreciate that. Anyway, move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second, I have a question.
Okay. Director Martin?
Is this built, do we, at this point in time, do we have any females in that department?
Yes, and there is a women's locker room. It's actually about half the size of the men's, but there are 3 members in O&M, not counting Dawn, she'd be the 4th, but she's off-site. So there's Cheryl in water operations, Megan is the operations assistant, and then Georgia is our maximum.
And their facilities are sufficient?
Yes. Yeah, we looked at, I was told to look at overtaking their locker room as a possibility, and one, I said, I didn't want to do it. And 2, it's just too small, so it would.
Thank you, Ed, thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Great job, guys. Okay, Rob, you're up, 2.4.
It's actually Jason, and I'll take this one.
Oh, okay.
You skipping or?
Oh, you skipped the quarterly
Oh,
CIP
I'm
update.
sorry. Got ahead of myself.
2.3.
We'll do 2.3, capital projects quarterly update.
Okay, see if I can see anything on my screen.
So is it okay if we call you code name Hollywood now?
I had a consultant call me today and said,
Yeah.
are you supposed to be answering your own phone? Are people do that?
Do you really have a flip phone, or did you find that?
That is actually our department phone. So, saving on costs.
We are.
I knew you were gonna run me.
We are a frugal bunch.
IT wanted to upgrade us, and so it works.
Sorry.
Right. Okay, I'm here to provide an end-of-the-year report on our capital improvement projects. This is meant to be interactive, so if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. As you know, the Capital Facilities Group, which is within the engineering department, among many other things, manages large capital improvement projects. Staff provides quarterly reports, which we upload to our website. You may recall that Mr. Gumpel went through this presentation last year, kind of showed you the steps of how to find this information on our website, and I'm just going to repeat those steps and highlight some of the information for the last fiscal year. So where this information is found is by clicking on departments, and engineering, and capital facilities, and then active capital improvement projects. So selecting that will pull up a map. I will enlarge it. And we have pin drops, which locate a number of projects. These are both projects in construction and projects in design. So you have a list that comes up on the side, or you can select on them individually. You may, if you look at that list, you may recognize several projects that have already been completed. The desalination connection project, the Meadowlark Solids Force Main project, the San Leandro Hills Pump Station, all completed last fiscal year. In the first quarter of this fiscal year, you will see the Knoll Road Sewer Replacement project was recently completed. The Lift Station 1 Pump Station Improvement project was recently completed. So any member of the public can go here and get an update on these projects. So let's select Lift Station 1. A description of the project will pop up. There is a link. That link will take you to the quarterly report. This is what a quarterly report looks like for a project in construction. Again, has the description. We'll give you the quarterly task. What did we accomplish that in that last quarter? Any change orders that occurred. In particular, this project had a late change order in the project due to removal of some unsuitable material in the trench. It will give a schedule. We completed that project in June. The board accepted it in July, so this is all accurate. Outstanding issues at the end of the fourth quarter were to demobilize the contractor, which was completed last month, accept the project, which you did, and then submit documents for our Prop 84 reimbursement, which is that $338,000, which we're going to get back in our coffers. And that is still an outstanding item that we are going to pursue in this first quarter of this new fiscal year. So the financial information is also provided. It will give you the budget amount. It'll tell you the bid that the contractor submitted on, that $443,000. And then it gives you two columns. We just try to project, we try to track what do we anticipate monthly spending to build this project, and then, of course, what did we actually spend. And then it will also give you the number of change orders and that percentage, and then, of course, that adjusted total to the contractor. So that's what a typical quarterly report looks like for a construction project. Just to compare it to a project that's in design, I will select Rock Springs Sewer. This is a project that's we're pursuing this fiscal year, so much shorter. The financials are really just our way of tracking the contract with the designer. So you can see that we're nearly built out for this particular contract. And again, gives you those same quarterly updates. What did we do? Were there any amendments to the designer's contract? What's our schedule? In particular, this project, we were looking at taking out in the fall. However, one of the outstanding issues on this particular project is this was a project where the construction dollars were deferred more into the next fiscal year. So we need to look at this project, and we're more than likely going to bid it out in the winter instead of the fall because of those dollars available.
That's why there's such a big variance between 2.1 million of a budget and the contract amount of 231?
It's just, the budget amount includes the construction dollars, staff time, everything, and includes the consultant's fee as well. So that's the total budget to do the whole job and complete. And we just have a engineering contract for $231,000 for that particular engineer.
Okay.
So that is the quarterly reports. If there's any particular projects that you're interested in, I can skip to those, or I can skip to the end.
I just wanted to say that I remember when this was first presented last year, and it's a very impressive dashboard, and I think a great asset to our customers. I don't know if most of them care about, these kinds of details, but if it's something that maybe you can kind of pass on to Chris, if there's a real creative way to kind of push this site out to our customers a little bit more aggressively, just, I think it's kind of, well, let me ask, I mean, do other water districts have this same tool? I mean, this is a neat thing that I think a lot of time and thought went into it, but I don't, surf the websites of other water districts, but I don't know if
Yeah,
anybody else does.
I actually don't know if other
Yeah.
districts
Yeah,
do this.
I can't imagine. I mean, I think this is, leading, if you will, and so,
This helps with that transparency award that we get.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
It's
and
nice.
just so you know, we are looking at we're always looking at ways to improve this. Especially this map, we kind of want to improve that. The information that we provide, of course, it's a balance between too much and too little. There's a lot of information that we don't provide because it's just minutia. So we try to dial it down to digestible quantities.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Okay, let me
Thanks,
let me
Clint.
just forward to the end of the year report. which-
2.4?
I'm not sure if I have it here. Oh, it's right here, sorry. Engineers, we're good at acting, but computers. So this is a spreadsheet with a lot of numbers like we engineers love. But this really just boils down to sort of when you look at those large capital improvement projects, what you have is a contract amount. If you look at the last fiscal year, our staff managed $4.775 million in construction contracts. So the table down below gives you, again, it's that projected, how much money are we gonna spend monthly versus how much do we actually spend? So we anticipated on spending 4.770, we ended up spending a little bit less than that in the last fiscal year. And this is just a tool for staff, really just to track the information. So you can also see how many change orders we had. You can see a change order percentage, so that 0.34 percentage. As comparison, last year it was 0.54%. So we're trending in the right direction. And then down below, you can also see the amount of consultant contracts that we're managing through the year, that $2.5 million in consultant contracts that we're managing. It gives you kind of, at the end of the year, how far along are we? We're nearly 80% complete in those contracts. And then also inspection contracts, environmental geotechnical contracts. And then an item that I've added this year is just a line item to quantify how much material the districts actually purchased this fiscal year. The biggest amount was the pipe and the valves for the desal connection and some pumps and equipment for lift station 1. So normally you wouldn't see this amount very high, but it just happens that this last fiscal year we did a lot of pre-purchasing on our capital projects. So and then the graph after that just gives you just a graphical representation, again, of just tracking the projected and actuals of those dollars leaving the district. So, and that's where we ended at the end of the year in our CIP, so I can answer any additional questions you might
Dr. Evans?
I would just like to say thank you. I agree with Mike. It's very well done and very interesting, and it's nice to know you have such a good grip on where we're at, and we can document it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe we need to have a game on the web with Chris where people can go discover some fact hidden amongst this and they win a prize. So we can cause them
About the
to
food,
traverse
okay,
our website, because I'm sure this is an effort that's not seen very often.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate it.
There's probably analytics too, that they can look up to see how many people have actually gone to it. I don't,
That's a lot of work for probably a little, but
I don't think a lot of people probably have, just
No,
because
it's
most
just-
folks just want the water to come on and then waste it away, but,
All the
but
rest is,
it's pretty impressive, so great job to the team.
we enjoy
Very
it.
good job.
You did.
We appreciate it.
This is under Mr. Gumpel's direction?
Absolutely, this is his
Is
sort
that
of
his son in the
genius.
audience? Is that his son that came here? or-
He keeps us on our toes, and this is one of the tools he uses to make sure we're doing our job.
Thanks, Jason.
We don't need
Thank you.
no action on that, right?
No, this is for information.
Just for
Okay, let's move on to 2.4, approval of a temporary off-site water service agreement for the Bofi residents.
Thank you, President Snell, members of the board here. Okay. So what we have here is, we have a property that's requesting service here, water service. And this is on the very southernmost portion of the Lake San Marcos community. The property is actually to the south of it, begin the dedicated open space properties of the San Hills Ridge Line, if that kind of gives you an idea exactly where it's located. So what we have here is along the eastern, a little bit northeastern part of the property, actually going a little bit above it there, you have this 6-inch water main that exists in Vista Colina. Unfortunately, it terminates about 400 feet or so north of the property line. And the reason why it terminates at this location is because that's the elevation where you pretty much have the minimum pressure that you can get for a pipeline at that location. The further south you go, the more uphill you go and you continuously lose pressure. So there's no physical reason to extend a pipeline beyond that. So when this property requested service here, we are looking at different ways of giving them service. One is what we're presenting to you here, which is a temporary off-site agreement. So they would actually connect to the water main, that existing 6-inch water main, and then just run a private service there, and then have their own private booster pump to pump the pressure up to their property. We're also looking at possibly take it along the western frontage of the property. But that would have required a public mainline extension here, which would have been quite pricey, especially just for one house going in. And then when the city fire department decided there that they were not gonna require a fire hydrant to be put on the end of a pipeline like that, they were just gonna require a water tank. There was really not much reason to burden that property owner with that expense for doing it. So what staff is recommending here is the approval of the temporary off-site agreement there, based on the recommendations here provided in the staff report. And I'd like to answer any questions the board may have.
Director Hernandez.
Did I just hear you say that the pump is going to supply water to a water tank, and then the water tank will be then supply water to the residents?
Well, the way I understand it there, most likely what's gonna happen is they'll have their own booster pump, which will also supply the tank, but it's a
Right.
10,000-gallon tank meant for fire flow
That's,
purposes.
that's where I was going for that. And the home will be sprinkled, and that's what it's going to be.
Probably there. I don't
Yeah.
know the exact fire requirements on it, but the booster pump can directly serve the residents, from what I understand.
Director Martin.
Let me ask a question. So you're gonna extend the line from where it is now up to their property?
It's gonna be a private, this is just gonna be their own private 1-inch water service that'll go from the end of that existing 6-inch line all the way to the
But
property.
it seems to me you have another piece of property in between this one and one that's already been built.
That's correct.
Is that residentially zoned?
It is, I don't know if it's residentially zoned. They could probably put a house on that property.
And then what are they gonna have to do, put another 1-inch line, their own line?
They would probably do the same thing, yes. Extend their own service line from the end of that 6-inch line.
And the fire department is not requiring a hydrant?
No, based on the fire pressure, the fire flow that we get out there in a hydrant there, it's about 500 to 550 gallons per minute. They decided it's just not enough
flow that can come out of the fire hydrant at that point to make it worthwhile. And they prefer to have the on-site tank instead.
The existing house that's on the east side of this now, it's a little bit lower in elevation. And I think that's, people don't, Escondido Trust, Mike and his wife Lori have that house. Are they on a 1-inch line right now?
And that's the property just on the, you're talking about just on the eastern side of the pipeline?
Yeah.
I don't know what size line that they have there, but yes, I do believe yes.
But now, would they required, just out of curiosity, are they under the same requirements as this other person is? Or you
They
don't
are
know?
not, because their property actually fronts that line on Vista Colina.
Okay, so they actually run into the existing 6-inch water main
Correct, yeah, they can get service directly right off that line.
from their property?
Correct.
Okay. Well, this is gonna be an well, it's private property, is that street private property that goes up there?
Yes, yeah, and so they'll be required to have proof of a private easement for their 1-inch service that'll serve their property.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if any time in the future, there's a requirement there for water for the property to the south, which is very unlikely. And at that point, the temporary water service agreement does give us the ability to require them to connect to a mainline extension if that ever goes across the frontage of their property.
So it would then require them to put in a 6-inch main?
Well, if there's service needed south of their property, for instance, that would require extension of a main, then yes, they would connect into that.
But the property in between right now, that would probably just do the same thing we're bidding these people to do.
Exactly.
Director Oliver?
You know, would their meter sit at the end of the 6-inch line?
It would, yes.
And the property in between there isn't water service right now?
It is currently not serviced here. It's about the only property in that little block that is not. Yeah, they haven't made any improvements on it there. I believe it's just hillside at the moment.
No other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
And while you're there,
While I'm here.
go 2.5, temporary, oh, it's not
No, you're
temporary water, temporary water service exchange agreements with BID. I remember this now.
Okay, so move along to this here. This is at the request of the Vista Irrigation District here. They currently have an old 6-inch main that runs up Deer Springs and then continues up Sarver Lane once Deer Springs starts to make its bend to the east. Their pipeline it's a 50-year-old pipeline there. It's not in the greatest of conditions there. It needs to be replaced. And so what they're doing currently is they have 3 properties that are served off 2 different 3-inch meters. Those are the ones shown in the hatched area. And what they're requesting here is that we can take over service on their behalf through an exchange agreement so that we serve the properties off of our pipeline. And by doing that, they would be able to abandon this old pipeline there instead of having to incur the cost of replacing the pipeline. One thing about these lots in particular is part of what we call the boot area. And so, I'm sorry, the Bennett area. And so that's these blue parcels shown here. They're actually within the Vista Irrigation District water service area, even though all these properties are within our sphere of influence. So ultimately, all these properties are likely to be taken over by Vallecitos in the future. So with that there, what we'd like to recommend here is approval of the 2 temporary water service exchange agreements between BID and BWD. And I'd like to entertain any questions the board has.
Dr. Martin?
What's the benefit versus detriment to our repairs? Why would we do this?
Basically, what we're doing is just making two connections to our existing pipeline here. So, yeah, there's potentially some maintenance costs that we would incur, but we charge for that there through our water fees.
Director Martin, this is not uncommon. We've got other exchange agreements where we're better apt to serve, particularly in this area. So there's about 25 or 30 customers that we exchange with.
Director Hernandez.
And so we would make the connection to our water line at 3 times, is that what I heard you say?
There'd be 2 connections made there. Vista Irrigation District there is agreed to incur all the expenses
And they
associated.
would incur the expenses.
Correct.
The ratepayer would not.
Exactly, exactly. And that's probably a great point there, Director Hernandez here. I should probably make this very clear that the reason why we're doing this is, yeah, we're doing this for the benefit there of Vista Irrigation District. It's not like these property owners have made any requests or anything to us there. They're not subdividing, they're not doing any boundary adjustments. This is solely because Vista Irrigation District has a very deteriorating pipeline.
And did I understand that correctly? VID is gonna pay for any of the upfront costs involved?
That's correct. They're gonna pay for the connection to our pipeline here. They're gonna pay for the inspection fees that our inspectors would incur during that installation.
So then we would only be responsible for any maintenance thereafter?
Yes, and we would
Which
collect.
would be captured within their rates that they're paying?
Exactly.
The customer, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Dr. Algar?
Yeah, so why are these called temporary water service exchange agreements? Vista probably doesn't have any intention of ever upgrading the line.
Oh, great question, actually. We've actually had 5 temporary exchange agreements on the books here that we will be actually going the other way on here very shortly. And that's up in the Fairview Lane area off of Gopher Canyon Road, where VID, we were serving properties on their behalf. They recently installed a new pipeline in there, and now they are in the process of moving those services back over to their pipeline, and we will actually cancel those agreements.
I think at the time that they entered into these agreements, they hoped that they would be temporary in nature, but you're right, Craig, they're long-term agreements, so,
Well, I'm
you know,
just-
you could just call these exchange agreements, really.
Because it's within a sphere, eventually, they will go to, there's no timetable.
Why don't we just de-annex from one district and annex to the other district? If it's gonna be something that's more or less permanent.
Ultimately, yes, sir, that is the plan. We're probably going to commence a study, possibly as soon as next fiscal year, where we'll investigate taking all these different properties over from the Vista Irrigation District, incorporating them into our district.
This goes back really 50, 60 years in these areas. There have been a number of attempts to try to clean it up, and eventually it will be, I believe.
Thanks.
Anything else for Ralph?
All the dark blue areas, what are you telling us?
So these dark blue areas, these are parcels currently within our sphere of influence that are within the Vista Irrigation District water service area. So they technically serve these different properties in the property.
So, now let me ask you, the property directly to the northwest of this property, is it serviced by a pipe from the other direction?
Well, yeah, it would be served, probably by a different pipeline. I don't know Vista Irrigation District's system that well, so I can't tell you exactly where it comes from.
Well, they seem to have a lot of islands within our sphere,
Yes, they do.
and that comes from years and years and years ago, correct?
Yeah, now, this northern area, actually, they call it the boot area because it actually used to look like a boot. And over the years, a lot of these properties have been transitioned over to Vallecitos.
Thank you.
Great.
I'd like to move for approval.
We do have
sorry.
one speaker on this.
Oh, I'm
item
so
before-
sorry to
Yep.
hear that.
Mr. Hunsaker.
Mike Hunsaker. One of the things in the literature, the packets I noticed is that this was in lieu of going to LAFCO. Now, we have an urban water plan which says that we're gonna need about 12,000 acre feet, gallons of water in 4 years. And it would appear that this is a rather substantial amount of property that's involved. And one way or the other, we have to provide extra water for these people. So why are we doing exchange agreements when we won't have the water in 4 years anyway? Also a question, the rates. I saw some questions about Vista irrigation rates and some talk here of Vallecitos Water District rates. These are not obviously the same. And what is the difference? Who is subsidizing who? I agree with what you were saying, is it doesn't seem to be a real advantage. Vallecitos, I do not object to something which is a truly fair exchange in costs. But if this is something that should be annexed, it should either be annexed or it should not be annexed. And there are justifications for rationalizing district boundaries. But if we're not gonna have the water in 20 years, why are we discussing a temporary arrangement that can extend decades? And I'm rather leery of any avoidance of LAFCO at the present time. And that's gonna be a subject of great controversy in the future. Lastly, agreement seems to say, well, we don't guarantee water availability. Well, what are the conditions in which we suspend water availability? Because it's quite clear that if they're going to be cut off from all water, that's going to be a dire situation. So I think we need a lot of more specificity. I think I almost pronounced that right. More specificity as to what conditions we cut off water. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask a
Sure.
question?
Director Evans.
Yes, it's actually for staff. I'm not sure if it would be your, I thought I read somewhere in it that if we, with the temporary water service, if we could no longer provide water, we simply don't, and it becomes Vista's responsibility. Did I read that incorrectly?
No, I believe you read that right. Revert back.
So in other
Yeah.
words, if we no longer have the water, those people don't get it from us. It's temporary until there is none. That's how I read it. I don't remember where that was. I was trying to really quickly find the page, but, and if it's inadequate for peak demand, and, oh, here, it's on page 103, you have it. For peak demand and firefighting purposes, the property may be without water service from time to time, and we don't guarantee it. It still falls upon VID and the ultimate. I think part of the idea of the temporary service is until we're both ready to take on full responsibility, we're working an agreement. Because as in my district, I appreciate this opportunity because I don't know that VID could take care of the problem very well if that main were to break. I know there's a lot of difficulty in their district with that. So I think that inconvenience to the community would be worse if we left it. So I feel comfortable with it if I read that thing right, that it's still their ultimate. Okay.
Yeah, it's a joint effort to accommodate this customer.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, I would move for approval.
Director Martin?
That would be true of all of our customers.
Absolutely.
We don't guarantee water to any of our customers. As long as we have it, we have it. And, all the forecasts are we have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other point to Mr. Hunsaker is that this would come out of Vista's allocation.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
what,
this
that
is
was
an
the
exchange
point I
with
was gonna
Vista. We
say.
don't-
There's-
It's really Vista's.
This is not additional Vallecitos
It's not
water.
additional demand on our allocation
It's,
from our
it's the,
wholesale.
yeah, the
Vista gets
agreement,
billed for this water.
the agreement makes it clear that there's an adjustment at the water authority made for this water. Okay?
Oh, thank you.
Well, so it actually sounds like a very fair deal, and
Yeah.
for all parties involved, and we're in a better position to serve them, and since we're not paying for the upfront cost to bring them on board, it's kind of a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, it really is.
So I would like to move for approval.
Okay, we have a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Rob.
I don't say that Rob's staying up there, but I see James sneaking up behind him. Item 2.6.
Thank you, President Snell, members of the board. I figured both my staff members were up there, I needed a chance to get up here in front of you guys also. This item starts on page 108 of your packet, and is regarding ordinance 196, which is the annexation detachment ordinance. So this ordinance was actually adopted just back in February of this year, and essentially, it was a one-word change from the previous ordinance. There's a few other things, but we really, the crux of it is we really changed the word shall to may. So in the original ordinance, it talked about the open space, it talked about the easements, talked about right-of-way, it talked about for water and sewer annexation, and then it said it shall be annexed, so we changed it to it may be annexed. Understanding the intent is if we have contiguous open space that's never going to be served with water, it's dedicated, or sewer, that staff will look at it on a case-by-case basis and may exclude that from the annexation, using a logical approach. However, with that being said, that may put the ultimate at the end, gave it a request for variance from the developer. So the developer would request a variance in writing to staff, and staff would provide those options. So back in just the last meeting, July 20th, this item came up, and when going over, the staff requested, the board requested staff to take a look at the ordinance again, to kind of clarify, to be able to cover the intent of language change, and allow staff to kind of bring forward a recommendation to the board instead of creating confusion. So with that, staff has went ahead and at least taken the first crack of making some language changes. And that really starts on page 110 of the board packet and continues on 111. And essentially what the staff has done is clarified the, what I'll call the variance in this case, but also assigned that the general manager is under the general manager's discretion. So now we have a staff personnel that can look at this on a case-by-case basis and cover the intent and the spirit of the ordinance that the board discussed in the previous meeting and bring forward a single recommendation from staff as far as annexation or not to annex certain properties. From there on, obviously, the ultimate decision still lies with the board of whether that it wouldn't be called variance because now it's only one option is going to be the approved recommendation or something else will move forward. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but staff is looking for guidance and direction from the board.
Questions?
Go ahead.
Director Martin?
So this really came up at the last meeting when information had been sent out to people by someone giving all types of false misinformation on what we were doing with the project. And rather than people having to delve and read the thing like an attorney, we said make it easier so people understand what's really going on and they're not misled in the future by false accusations.
Yes, and just to clarify, usually if somebody has questions on it, and the engineering staff or through the general manager is usually contacted. In this case, the information that was disseminated was never vetted or questions through at least the my knowledge, engineering staff or the general manager's office. So that information was never vetted or questions were asked. So that information was confusing and misleading.
So this is actually something that staff was asked to put in to stop the confusion so it doesn't happen again.
Yes, and this also allows staff to actually make the decision and bring forward a recommendation and still keep it within the spirit and the intent of the ordinance.
Thank you very much. I read it very thoroughly. Good job.
Director Oliver?
Yeah, on the two conditions for exclusion, the first one I'm a little bit confused. It says, does not create islands of dedicated open spaces within the project area, and then or district boundaries. I don't understand the or district boundaries part of that. I can understand the project area not excluding open space that's been created within the project area, but what difference does it make within district boundaries?
Well, we don't, what we're looking for is not to create windows or islands within the district boundary or within the project development, so both. And there's so many variability, whether it's within our sphere of influence or outside of our sphere of influence. We also know of future projects that may be north or east or south of the existing project. So when you look at just the project itself and you see a large open space, let's say to the west, when you look at that project by itself, and that's why we said in certain conditions, it may look like it's continuous open space and there's nothing else, but there may be another development that staff knows about that's going to completely surround that open space. In that case, even though that other project may take several years to come in, it would essentially, we'd be creating a hole or window in which LAFCO frowns upon as far as open space and annexations. So there's a lot of variability with that, Director Elfart, and what we want to do is leave that open. And if staff is aware of other projects, which a lot of times we are because we work directly with the city and the land use agencies of future projects, and the developers come to us years before they actually build anything. We don't want to just look at everything with blinders on and just say, based on just this footprint, this is the right thing to do. We want to look at it holistically for the whole district.
Right, thanks.
Any other questions by the board? Okay, thanks, James. We do have one speaker on this item, Mr. Hunsaker.
I agree that open space has never been annexed into or charged for sewer services it'll never use. That's a given. The question is, it has been charged in the past. And there is a mechanism for detachment. What about the existing open spaces and the fees or the charges that people have been charged in the past? Can they recover these overcharges by detaching? And I'm also sort of curious as to how we have a different formula for detachment refunds versus annexation charges. And that's it.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion on 2.6. There's no other discussion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Do you need a roll call or no? Okay.
And this will make it ordinance number 200. Director Elefart?
Yes.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Campbell?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Director Stone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. 2.8.
Okay, again, last,
2.7. Isn't it?
2.7, you mean?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
2.7, jeez.
We know what you meant.
Oh,
It's cold. Like in a fog up here.
I know.
Ordinance 197 is the business of the board, and last time we met, we talked about some changes that we brought forth for you here in a new ordinance. The only difference, and it's hard to see on this copy, is we looked and saw that the San Marcos Economic Development Council doesn't exist anymore. So the only recommendation, in addition to what the board consent then on last time was to strike that as well.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have one question, Jeff. It looks like, I'm sure we didn't, but it looks like that we had to strike the entire ordinance to bring it back with 2 changes? Does that make, I don't understand that. Can you just make changes to the ordinance?
Well, I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just modifying the ordinance to incorporate these changes. So we'll have one ordinance, you know, I think to address your question, rather than having to look at multiple ordinances,
Yeah.
you'll just have one clean ordinance to look at, which will list these changes. Rather than amending an ordinance and then having to go back and look at the ordinance, the prior ordinance.
Oh, okay, so.
Okay?
Okay, so the prior ordinance is 194, we're just changing it to 197 with those changes.
Yeah, so actually, the current ordinance is 197, and this ordinance will be 201.
Yes. and it'll-
That'll be the new ordinance.
It'll be ordinance 201, it'll be the ordinance that addresses the board business.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll be
So
cleaner
we do
for.
have to repeal an entire ordinance just to make those minor changes.
Yeah,
Yes.
because otherwise, yeah, I think it's been our practice, like I said, it's sort of like you're trying to put a puzzle together, and
Yeah.
it's confusing for somebody if they just pick up, here's the ordinance. you
It
know.
used to not be that way, and we had a mess of ordinances that we had to go through. It just keeps it a lot cleaner.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Before we take a vote,
Yep.
I have a question for council. If I disagree with San Diego North Economic Development Council being on the list, do I have to reject the entire ordinance, or can I approve the ordinance with that one exception? And I just don't know.
Well, I mean, if, you know, I think you just have to, if you don't agree with the ordinance, you vote against it. If you agree with it, you
So
vote
if in
for it.
principle, I agree with everything but
Yeah.
that, so okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can
that
go
just-
on record that you
I thought
do.
I was, okay, I'll go on
Yeah.
record that I really don't approve of San Diego North Economic Development Council, but I wouldn't hold up the ordinance for that. So, thank you.
We have a motion made and a second. Roll call.
Director Oliver?
Yes.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes.
Director Snow?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. 2.8, quarterly investment report.
John, would you like to come up and give a report? This is required by our investment policy to have a quarterly report on investments.
Good evening, President Snell, members of the board. Beginning on page 129 of your agenda is the quarterly investment report. It's also the year-end, fiscal year-end investment report too. The investment policy requires that monthly there's an investment report as part of the consent calendar, and quarterly it is presented to you for review. There are sufficient funds in the operating account to meet district obligations for the next 30 days, which is also in our policy. And we can meet that obligation without liquidating any of the investments for the next 6 months. In the past quarter, we had quite a bit happen, actually, as far as agencies. What we call agencies, those are United States government bonds, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Farm Credit. We purchased about 5 million of those. We had about 100,000 mature, but we had 6.8 million called in the last 3 months. What called means is when the Fannie Mae puts out a bond, they can have a call provision, which means that they'll put it out at a certain rate. I'm just making up a rate, 1.5%. Now, when rates go down, they can say, you know, we're going to call that bond and call it back in because rates are lower, so we can pull that bond in, save the interest expense, just like refinancing a house or any other type of loan. So, and actually, during the fiscal year, we had a total of $15.4 million in bonds get called. I've never seen anything like that in the 16, 17 years of doing this. That was a lot. Going back to last quarter, purchased one CD for $245,000. We purchased about $2 million of commercial paper. Commercial paper is a very highly liquid investment, and it's usually in $100,000 denominations, and we can go out to about 270 days on those, and the interest rate is pretty good on those. For LAIF, LAIF is the local agency investment fund run by the state patrol, and we deposited $9 million into LAIF this last quarter, and we withdrew $7.9 million out. Interest earnings in the quarter were $88,500 in that. Our weighted average yield for the quarter actually increased by 0.03%. So we
We're moving.
are steaming right ahead. Our
All
weighted
eyes are on
average days,
Vallecitos.
our weighted average days to maturity actually decreased by 25 days because of all those calls. When we invest, we look out 5 years, and we target our debt service payments, and also when capital projects are going on, how much are we gonna need when, and we invest so that that investment will mature when we need the money. Since things have been called and we've been investing out, it's always the later things that get called, so that pulls a lot of our money into more of the short-term portfolio. Let's see what else you have there. On page 130 starts the graphs, and there's a couple snapshot graphs there. One of them is the investment allocation, which just basically shows how we're allocated. We had on June 30th, about 35% of our portfolio was in agencies. Those are the U.S. government bonds. About 38% was in LAIF, 11% with the San Diego County Investment Pool, almost 10% in CDs, and 7% in commercial paper. The next graph next to that is the investments excluding LAIF and the San Diego County Investment Pool, and how our maturity structure is. If you look at that every month, you'll see that that changes dramatically every month, especially with the amount of calls that we got, because try to build up that later out portion in those 4 or 5 years, the 3 to 5 year zone, because that's where the interest rates are a little bit higher, but then they get called and everything moves back to the left. There are 3 objectives, 3 main objectives with the investment policy, and that is safety, liquidity, and yield. We want safe investments. That's why we go with these U.S. government agencies. We want liquidity. Like I said, we got to be able to pay our bills when the time comes, and then we look at the rate of return, the yield, and we look at them in that order. As far as safety,
Quick question, John, and like anything else, I know you diversify the portfolio, and you're doing an excellent job of doing that. Out of curiosity, though, out of the wheel that you're showing here, which potentially has the highest yield, and which one has the lowest yield? And I know you're diversifying for a number of reasons. I'm not suggesting anything other than I'm curious as to which one of these gives us historically the highest yield, and which one gives us the lowest yield.
Sure. Start with the lowest.
Yep.
That's going to be LAIF. And the reason why LAIF is the lowest is because we can get up to $50 million. We don't have $50 million in there, but you can get, within 24 hours, you can get a lot of money.
Oh.
And that's why it's
liquid.
It's very, very liquid, yeah. So that's historically, traditionally, the lowest yielding. Highest yielding, it depends on the day, really. Because sometimes CDs will look pretty good, but we're limited to $245,000 per FDIC. But then other times, some agencies will look really good, and then commercial paper will be good, depending on what's happening with the stock market, what's happening overseas, Brexit was kind of disruptive.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You said the bonds were called, and you gave that example about refinancing the house. Does that mean we save money because we're not spending that extra money, or is it costing us money?
We're actually losing the interest. For instance, if we have a bond that we invested in is paying at 1.5%, and then they call that, and the only thing I can invest in, the going rate, is 1%, we lose that differential.
And it's interesting, I've been hearing this chatter in this last 6 months about the potential of going to negative interest. And is that something that could happen with bonds where in fact you've got to pay to play?
Just my own personal opinion, I don't think it'll happen here in this country. It might happen in another country, but I'm betting that it won't happen here in the United States, yes.
Soon.
That was a reference to Europe.
I'm sorry?
That was a reference to Europe, the negative. you
Right,
heard.
right,
It wasn't-
Switzerland was looking at that and yada, yada, but, so, not us yet. But if that were to happen, what would happen to it? We would have to pay.
It'd probably be stuffed under a mattress or something, so,
Yeah.
because we wouldn't want to lose money on our money.
Exactly.
So it would, yeah, it would
All
go
right.
into some type of savings account or something. We'd earn probably next to nothing, but we wouldn't be paying.
Tom's desk. Here's Tom's desk.
The other, I guess, last couple things to tell you about this is on page 133. Those are all the investments right there, and that's how we account for them. We have the 2 replacement funds that we just talked about, the reserves, the water replacement, the water capacity, the sewer replacement, sewer capacity, and those are just basically how the investments are allocated to those funds, maturity dates, when we purchase them, what they are, the ratings, the return that we're getting on those. And then the next chart on page not chart, but table on page 134 is divvied up by the type of investment. Commercial paper first, CDs next, agencies next, and then our investment pools, San Diego County and LEAF, and the amounts of each of those. At the bottom of that shows the percentage that were invested in each of those types of investments and the investment policy limit, and we are within all of our limits for the policy.
Director Martin?
I heard you say about liquidity and safety and then yield. Do we have any portion of the portfolio that is pork bellies, that is high yield or crazy thing?
No.
It could get more interest, but could go to zero?
It's safety first.
Safety first.
It's safety first, and then, yeah.
And that we're very limited to what we can invest in by government code, and then our investment policy is even more limiting, so no pork bellies.
No startup
Not
biotechs
allowable
or nothing?
investment.
No Orange County junk
No
bonds.
commodities, no derivatives.
Bitcoin, gold bars, nothing like that.
I was gonna ask you.
Director Martin?
At one of our meetings, I think it was leadership meeting, I'm not sure, but one of our meetings, we were given, San Diego County was there, giving us a pitch on investing, reinvesting in the county. How is that doing? I see we have some money in the portfolio. Is that doing well? Is that doing reinvesting in yourself, really?
Yeah, they are at 0.81. It is, you're talking Dan McAllister, the county treasurer? Yeah. Okay, yeah, we have 5 million invested in that pool, and they're at 0.81, which pretty much mirrors what we're doing on our own. We are 0.855. So we're almost neck and neck with them.
And they're very liquid as well.
Yeah, and they're also very good.
Oh,
It's I think maximum 4 days it takes to get money out of there.
thank you.
Another question? Just for information purposes only.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, moving on to reports, 3 point.
Can I just take a break? I'm so sorry.
Take a 5-minute break.
Student of mine over at Cal State San Marcos in our leadership class. So, yeah, and then other things I have, and I mentioned this I think maybe the last meeting, if I remember.
Hold on.
Yes.
How you liking the class, AJ?
Oh, shoot, I couldn't, I was trying to go fast enough.
How you like the teacher?
No, honestly, between him and Greg Thomas from Rincon, they are great instructors. And the whole program is actually pretty great. For us, it's more of a survey course talking about water in general. I've been in the industry for about 11 years, but more on the landscape irrigation side.
Okay.
So it's actually fascinating to learn the different facets of water and wastewater industry.
Okay, and do you live here in San Marcos?
Yeah, I actually live in Old Creek Ranch by San Luis.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, super.
Tom, are you going to be doing the seminars that you did last year?
We're thinking about that in the fall, a public
In the
forum.
fall?
Yeah, and one that we already have, we're thinking about is the unanticipated, or what did I say it was gonna be?
Unintended?
Yeah, unintended consequences, thank you. Unintended consequences of conservation, deforestation
Uh-huh.
mainly. So Farm Bureau, some of the other organizations, NGOs that deal with repopulating trees and things like that.
The more the merrier. They were excellent seminars.
Oh, appreciate
And they
the
kept building
feedback.
and building, and I'm sorry they stopped, because it really
Yeah.
was educational for not only me, but the other members of the community who had no idea what was going on. This gave them a very keen insight as to what the heck water's all about, so.
Very good. I hope I can
Keep it
report
up.
back that
Make more of them.
we're doing. Okay, great, thank you.
So you recommend we keep them going? Okay, super. I'm glad you could attend our meeting.
Okay, yeah, first item I've got for you, just what's coming back. This was in the board packet when we talked about the 218, but didn't get much discussion, and I wanted to make sure it was in front of you, and it'll come back next time. It doesn't need to be in a 218 notice, it's the pump zone rates. It's a surcharge basically for power. And they've gone up quite a bit, so we took and smoothed them instead, and we'll bring that back, not for action, but just so you've got it to discuss, and then when we actually have our rate hearing is when we'll take action on it.
Director?
Have we looked at, because at one of our last conferences, we had heard that the new regulations are such that we can put solar panel zones and take that power, add it to the grid, not associated right at the area. Have we looked at the cost benefit of doing that at these?
We're looking at projects now, yeah, on that as well. James kind of heads up some of the, we get a lot of calls
Yeah.
about that, people want to do that for us, so we've been looking at the Twin Oaks site and other things as well.
Well, could we get a report on that in the next month
Yeah,
or so? Just
absolutely.
to find out when we can start thumbing our nose at SDG&E? Oh, I said
Never.
that.
I have a follow-up to that, and you're doing an exceptional job as the interim CEO, let me tell you, exceptional. And I know this is something Mr. Hernandez has been talking about for 2 years, the Twin Oaks, that big area we have there, and it seems it's gotten zero traction from staff.
Oh, no, we're
Even looking into it.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's a 2-year process?
There's a lot to look at, yeah. So,
Okay.
yep.
Next month we'll do a report.
Okay, a couple other things here for you. What do I have? Oh, the handbook is another thing that's gonna come back to you too. We need to actually officially adopt it. We looked at it yesterday or last board meeting and approved it, but in order to rescind all the other, kind of like we did with this ordinance, cleaning it up, getting rid of some of the ordinances so there's not so many, we'll adopt it and have a list of resolutions to rescind. And we're kind of working on cleaning that up. So that'll come back to you as well. South Lake, I had a question about South Lake last time. Just to clarify, on South Lake, when City Manager Griffith comes to us and asks for an extension, what he's really extending is the time for the completion of the project. So the lease is in place, has been in place, and will be in place. It's a 50-year term, 25-year option. And the last extension was to December 31st, 2018. And we just got word recently that they're surveying out there, so they're kind of picking it up again and could be picking up this project again. So that doesn't have to come back right away, because we're at the 2018 with that extension. Yes.
Repeat that again, please.
Yeah.
The lease is in place until
Correct.
50.
50 years from, it was 2008 or something like that.
5 or 8, something like that.
Maybe it was 5, yeah.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
but
And in the terms of the lease, there was a certain date that they were supposed to be operational by, and it was December 31st, 2010 was the original date. So when that first date was approaching, they came to us and asked for an extension. And then we extended it, I think, a year the first time in 2011. And then when 2011 was approaching, it came again, and they were also changing the plans too. So, and because of the way the lease was written, we have to approve what their plans are. So we were doing two things when they would approach us. We'd approve, give our buy-in to the plan, the board would, and then the board would also approve an extension. So the last time was all the way up to 2018. And you will see another change in the plan as well.
Yeah, and a change and you said they are doing something out there, because
Yeah,
there
they
is a
started.
provision in there that if they do not meet their goal on doing something, we have the right to rescind
Yeah,
the
that's-
50-year lease.
That's
So, I'm happy to hear
2018.
they're doing something.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But I understand it's the solar panels that's been holding them up, because you can't get all the information.
Bazinga.
Okay, and I don't know if you got the email yet, but Director Sinella saw the Pokemon video that we have, the Pokemon Go thing. Do we have that ready to go or no? I want to show you something that our outreach department put together with the help of some professional actors as well. It's a public awareness
Yeah, I
piece.
haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it.
I'd like to see it. I would like to apologize if I've missed any emails, because we have no internet at our
I
house.
don't think I got it.
We've got reports coming in all over the district. Look at the forest we found when they were cleaning out the sewer yesterday.
Oh, man, that's really gonna muck things up. Tell the board the engineering department is gonna take care of it.
Will do.
Yeah, you made the phone call, yeah, you put me through to Professor Galt, we need an expert on this right away.
Was he talking to Scotty?
Engineering department has been tasked to take care of it. So I'm taking the liberty of calling in an expert from Japan. So, Lisa, can you put him on the screen here? Okay, that's not gonna help. Give me some idea, guys, what do we got?
I can check the sewer capacity and figure out a good place to cut these building
That sounds good. Lisa?
We could add Pokeballs to the sewer to control their population.
All right, now we're getting somewhere. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. I've got an alert. Okay, looks like there's something coming up on the Pokedex. I think there's a Pokemon in the vicinity.
Don't move, don't move.
Wow, look at the CP value. What's a Pokemon?
Look at the flip phone.
Guys, what's going on? What are you doing?
No Pokemon.
That's too cool.
Lisa, what do you got?
We could, sorry guys.
I'm gonna crack it up. Don't do it. I really can't do this. You can get it. Here you go. Oh, that's perfect. This is going into review. I've got an alert. Round it up.
Don't move, don't move.
Wow, look at the CP value. What's a Pokemon?
I think we just put this up yesterday, and it already has 2,400 views.
Oh, really?
It's reached over 7,000 people. 7,000 people. Yeah. Wow.
Very nice,
Yeah,
Very fun, very
excellent.
fun.
Couple other things I've got for you. The North San Diego Water Reuse Coalition, if you remember, we had the very favorable grand jury report where they actually commended us for what we're doing at the coalition. They were currently writing a response to the grand jury. They had 3 recommendations. One was to expand our our membership, basically. We started out with 4, now there's 10 agencies, and they said, hey, this is so good, it should be more of a regional footprint. And so, we're responding positively to that as soon as we go through this second round of funding, and then we'll expand that. The other one of them was water, using reclaimed water in the 78 corridor between Escondido and Oceanside, because there's a lot of potable water there. So that's Rincon, Escondido, Oceanside are addressing that with increasing their water reclaimed to Caltrans for that. And then the other one was to look at, they said rainwater, but stormwater. And that one is one that we partially will agree with, because if we were to first run stormwater, if we were to treat and store and distribute that, you're probably looking at scores of thousands of dollars for 1 acre foot of water, by the time we cost that out. But it just so happens at the same time, San Diego County is doing a whole feasibility study on stormwater recapture. So, and they're asking for input from us agencies as well. So we're gonna keep our eye close on that feasibility study, get some best practices that come out of that, and be responsive. The coalition will be responsive to that. So when I get the actual response letter, I'll distribute that to the board. So, and that's due at the end of this month. So, all right, some good news there. And the last thing, just for your interest, I think it's tonight, the Discovery Channel is having a documentary on Colorado River. What is it? What's the name of the controversial possible thing here? And it is
The killing of the Colorado River.
Colorado, yeah, it's just called the Colorado River documentary. I don't know what it's actually called, but and it will be about the stressors on the Colorado River and all the demands on it and things like that. So
Do you know what time that's gonna be?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock?
I have my DVR set for it.
Oh, good.
Oh, what time, do you know, Director?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock, oh, thank you.
Of course, it might be Eastern time, so it could have started at 6, because Discovery does that sometimes. But I DVR'd it.
We gotta go. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Legal counsel.
I'll confine mine to closed session.
Water Authority.
Yes, we just had our meeting, and we've invested several hundreds of thousands of dollars in 2 legal services to be preemptive on working on the transition of the desalination plant to take over when the power plant closes down. So a lot of little details that were involved. It's just interesting how the funds keep adding up on that. Secondly, you mentioned SDG&E, and we recently, the Hoover Dam, I believe it's the Western Power Coalition or something of that name, it controls the electricity that comes out of the dam, and there's recently, it was like in 2011, there was an opportunity to open it up for new contractors to go on board in October of 17. And we were able, as the Water Authority was able to get 1.6 kilowatts, is that right? Megawatts. Megawatts. And so in the process, though, we have to be able to prove at this October that we have transmission lines, and of course, we don't have the transmission lines for it. So we're going in, we authorized the GM to establish a system with Western so that we could use their power lines and bring it in, and they're estimating over 50 years we'll save about $14 million in doing so, but we're just on a real tight deadline. And the third interesting thing was we just went into an agreement. We're trying to purchase, the Water Authority is trying to purchase 6 acres near Valley Center as a mitigation bank. And what it is they know that we're going to have some projects coming up that need it, and this is riparian wetlands. So they're very hard to get, very hard to maintain, but this one we're going to go through a mitigation bank. The bank will take on the full responsibility of maintaining the facilities, which is the big expense, making sure it works. We've come on board very early in the process. There's 22 acres, they can only release so much time. We're only going to take 6. And normally they're $550,000 an acre for wetland riparian. We got the deal at $340,000 per acre. So it's quite, and that does include through the bank that we have, it's taken care of. So they said wetland is the hardest to get. And they figure that that will get us through any of the anticipated projects in the near future, like in the next 50 years. I think that's pretty near. But isn't that incredible that it's $550,000 an acre? So, and then just an aside, I guess this is public knowledge now. We did an evaluation of our GM, and Maureen went with flying colors. Everyone was very happy with her. She's going into her, I believe it's her 21st year. She accepted a salary raise, but only at the same rate as the employees got, not admin, but employees, I think it was 1.8%, which puts her just over $300,000 a year. And then she got a $15,000 one-time bonus. She does an amazing job, but I just thought you'd be happy to know we got through that, and I believe that's the gist of most of it. So.
Did they talk to Jeff about the bonus?
No, they did not talk to Jeff about the bonus.
He's got strong opinions about those, right?
Yeah.
So,
I don't go into the details about, and they don't, but I do have to say, last time when we did the evaluation, she would not accept a raise. She said no.
If you structure those, there's ways of doing it, I think, that you can get past the constitutional prohibition, but
Absolutely.
you have to be careful.
I agree.
There's always a way as long as it's.
we don't do
Well,
bonuses here at Vallecitos.
Yeah. Bad idea.
But
One of the important takeaways from that is you don't have to accept a raise.
I didn't catch that part.
I just would like to say.
Maureen set the standard for you.
We had just recently taken on our new attorney, Mark Haddam, and he has been really, I have to say, really sharp on catching up with every little nitty-bitty detail. So it's kind of a whole different approach from what they had before. Very interesting. Thank you.
thanks for your report. Gentlemen, anything from Encina?
Policy and Finance Committee hasn't met since our last board meeting, so no report.
Yes?
We have ours next week, the capital committee.
Any reports on travel or conferences, seminars? I haven't done anything recently. Director Martin?
I'm gonna bring up one, there was no compensation for this one, we bring it up because it came up at the last meeting. The Chamber of Commerce had their meet the electeds, and it was attended very well by electeds. There were a lot of electeds there. That was about all that was there, but there were a lot of electeds there. So it was at City Hall, and it went very well. That was a no compensation, just bringing it up to let you know some of us had attended.
Any other reports? Okay. And then in your packages, you'll see the quarterly board expenses, and we have the WEF groundwater tour coming up, so if you plan on attending that, let Diane know. I think that's gonna be through the Twin Oaks Valley.
We're gonna
Or
find
somewhere on
those
the-
teacups by Godfrey. We're gonna find them, fill them up one spoon at a time.
Any comments or future agenda items?
I just have one comment, and I may have already spoken about this, but Tom, you were talking about those seminars. Did I already talk about Eric Larson and the Farm Bureau's presentation? Well, he just did a wonderful presentation on agriculture for the Water Authority, and it was kind of one of the unusual consequences of the drought. And the farmers have done an amazing job of addressing it, and they've actually universally lowered how much water they use per acre. But we found out that we have $1.8 billion agricultural business in San Diego County. Did I already tell you this?
No.
And we're the 5th farming agricultural county in the nation.
Wow.
We have more farms in our county than any other county in I think the contiguous United States. And our number 1 crop is not avocados. It's our number 2 crop. And the farmers are doing these amazing things with drips and reducing the land they're using, and they're talking about bringing in, which is kind of retro, olive oil, and because we used to produce that. And then when water was very cheap and came in with the state water project, the farmers could make more money with other crops. So now they're talking about bringing back the olive oil, and they're also talking about avocados and how avocados were unheard of. And for a long time, nobody knew what an avocado was. And not only did we start developing it, but we put out a lot of public campaigns out. So then, and I was kind of laughing at that, except my friend just came back. He moved to Maine, and he actually met two people who had never seen, heard of, or tasted an avocado.
I thought it
And
was
he's
a
from
color before I
California. It
moved
was
to
like,
California.
but the interesting thing is they turned avocado into amazing product and made a lot of money off it. They're now looking at dragon fruit, which is also comes from south of the border, and they're saying they're focusing, and I really have to hand it to the agriculture department, how they're addressing the issues and what they have learned to do in accommodating the drought. So he'd be interesting if you're looking.
That was one of the speakers I had in mind. for the-
Oh, he's just incredible.
Wasn't he one of the ones last fall? There was
Well,
somebody.
Paul Wenger from Farm Bureau.
Oh, was it?
spoke.
Okay. Well, he was very good, too.
I
Yes,
missed
he was-
those
he was great,
seminars,
yeah.
it didn't
But
work
that
for me, but.
presentation that Betty is referencing was made, you may recall, at the San Diego North EDC last year as well.
Oh, okay.
Right,
It was.
but this was even more detailed. It was just because they've done more and there's new rules, and they're also brought in the thing about marijuana becoming
Oh,
a
so-
possible legalized crop, and how that, if it happens, right now it's Humboldt County. But if it happens, San Diego County, they've already researched it, it's the greatest place.
Oh.
But,
You'll be
he
taking
said,
it really
the state will only give out 10 permits. In the
Wow.
entire state, it will be 10 permitted. That's already been determined if it passes.
What's the number one?
That's,
crop?
that's gonna
Oh, the number one crop, oh, yeah, that's so important, and I'm
You said avocado was number 2?
it's flowers, ornamental succulents.
Yeah.
And I believe Altman is now the number
excellent.
one company in the world
Mhm.
for succulents.
Right here in San Juan.
Yeah.
Right here, and that's where they started. It's just very fascinating, and Eric's a wonderful speaker, and he's got a great history, so he's great at questions. That was just my suggestion. And I figured
Yeah, I
you
heard
probably had knew about it, but
Maybe not.
I just
Thank you.
wanted to throw that out.
Okay. Any other comments, future items? Martin?
I have a question for, and I'm just, been going through this in my head, I don't know the answer, that's why I'm here asking the general manager. What's Chris's title?
Is the Conservation and Public Awareness Supervisor?
Okay, I guess my question is this, at the last meeting we had, there were at least 15 to 20 respondents as to an erroneous email that was sent out. People were showing up upset because of this bad email that went out, telling lies about the water district. My question is it in the outreach's responsibility, as it was with the gentleman whose house burned down, we did a huge PR thing on that when it happened at the time. Is it in his responsibility to answer those 15 to 20 respondents for the water district? Because the water district, that was, just a question, I don't know the answer.
That would probably be under my, that's probably something he'd probably help if we were gonna respond. Maybe help format it and kind of edit a response and.
Do you think that's something, and I don't know, but.
I had considered that, but then I also considered it may fuel a little bit of, it's still possible to do that. There was a lot of emails that came in maybe about 20 years ago.
Yeah, in regards to something that was printed erroneously in lies about what we were doing as a district. So it was a district that was under attack, is the way I look at it, saying, hey, they're gonna pull something down there. And of course, we didn't, and we weren't, but I don't know, it's my opinion that Chris, it's a non-political thing. It was strictly saying what the district was gonna do, that I think Chris or someone should respond to it.
That would have been.
Because those 15 people weren't here that night. So they never got answers directly or indirectly from anybody, other than probably the same person that sent out the original lying email. So other than that, they never heard any response. I don't know if it's incumbent upon our staff to do that, but I would think it is, but that's my opinion.
I'm a little confused. Was the email that Director Martin's referring to, did that come from internal, from within the district, or did that come external, just somebody out in
I'm
the
not aware of an
community?
email. I was aware of a flyer. I'm not aware of an email.
Well, Where did it come, like, I get, the one that was
Don't know.
misrepresenting what was being discussed that evening?
Yeah, I'm not.
We don't know if
where
it was
the origin of
internal or
that is.
external, okay. It just showed up.
No, yeah. Yeah, it wasn't, not digital that I'm aware of. I just had
So
it.
wherever it came from,
Yeah.
we had a lot of people that left their names and telephone numbers and addresses. I mean, it's some way to respond to them.
Mhm.
Is that something we should be doing?
That's your purview, and I was, to be honest with you, I was formulating a response to that, and I thought, is it gonna fuel anything, or would it really solve anything? Looking at the nature of some of the emails that came through, and if it's the pleasure of the board, I can draft something, you know? Yeah.
It's hard to
Something to
do
kick
that
around.
via email without,
Yes.
without writing an entire 2 or 3 pages.
It would only generate, that was my concern, if,
More
you know,
questions
yeah,
or more?
if I could encapsulate everything for that audience.
And I was, do we know how many people view our television?
Don't know, but it can actually go in and see the hits by, don't know.
Because, I mean, for those that were seriously interested, they could have watched the
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
video and found out
There's a
what
little
was
bit of a
really
delay
going on.
until it's actually on, but, yeah,
Are our workshop videos televised? I don't believe they are.
all public.
All of them are televised? Well, I don't know the answer, I'm just saying, I don't know. I just
That was my judgment, and that I started to, but then I thought,
All right. Well, just as an outreach part, that's part of telling people, setting them straight.
yeah.
Because if, once someone realizes we're setting people straight, maybe they won't do that 2 years from now for the next erroneous email that goes out, because they know, if I see this, we'll respond to it. Just a thought.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
If I can, just to clarify for the future agenda items. So I've got the pump zones coming back next time, just for information, and that's to give an advanced preview of what's coming up at the public hearing. The 218 notices did go out, so, and then the handbook will come out for official adoption, rescinding of, clean up the resolutions and ordinances.
Are we getting a hard copy of the 218, or just wait for it in the mail?
I can bring a hard copy. Yeah. You'll get it in the mail too, pretty soon. And then the solar update, and we'll bring that back next time.
Okay.
Great. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.